All right, everybody, welcome back. I'm Sean Zubor, CEO of Stonehouse Realty. Welcome to another episode of Haustalks. Today, we have the president. Oh, this is going to be a hard one. We have Kadin Rainville, president of the Interior Association of Realtors, right?
Close. Association of Interior Realtors.
Gotcha. I knew I'd get it wrong 100%. I warned you on that. So welcome aboard, brother. You're obviously at Stonehouse as well, so thanks so much for joining us. I really appreciate that. So you're a rock star agent. You have a pretty stellar background when it comes to, obviously, I know you've dug into politics or you're heading in certain directions. You're obviously the president of the board, which actually covers, like, probably landmass wise, is probably the biggest board, right? So that's Kamloops, Kelowna. Where else would be included in that?
All the way down South Okanagan to the border of Soyuz, Kootenays as well. Once you get up into Kamloops, the Thompson-Nicola Regional District. So you're getting up to Blue River, Valemont. Oh, wow. Very large area, I guess, out to Lillooet and Merritt as well. So, yeah, physically, very large area. Lots of travel to go see all the members, all the realtors, for sure.
And so how many members are there part of the board, roughly?
We normally sit around 2,600 members.
That's actually fairly decent size because if I remember correctly, the Fraser Valley is around 5,000. So, and that's a highly densely populated area. So anyways, tell us about yourself. When did you start real estate? How did you start this journey? What brought you to being part of the governing body when it comes to the board? Yeah, let us know a little bit about you.
Okay, well, my journey in real estate started at the end of 2020. I finally became licensed. That was by the suggestion of my wife, or should I say an ultimatum by my wife. Came out of the dealership world, working in the finance office, where she and myself were unhappy with where my life was going. So I figured, why not give it a try? My background definitely prepared me well in the paperwork and attention to detail side of things. Once I jumped into the real estate side, I do everything 110%. Yeah. So once I started getting involved, a colleague of mine approached me and said, hey, why don't you run for a position on our board? And at that point in time, I said, absolutely not. But I never shy away from a challenge. So I figured, hey, why not give this a shot? Ran for a position. And eventually then the board wanted me to be an executive, vice president, and now moving into past president in the spring.
Awesome. It's funny, actually. I never knew you worked I was in the car business prior. It's funny, the last guy that we had on here, he was in mortgages prior. I was in mortgages prior as well. But prior to mortgages, I was in the car business for a while. I worked in the box in the finance office and sales manager and so on and so forth. How long were you working as a finance manager?
It was on and off for 10 years. I'd kind of go from the box, as you called it, into sales management as well.
Gotcha.
I was primarily power sports. So a lot of time with Polaris Yamaha. And then 4 or 5 years with Harley Davidson as well.
Very cool. Yeah. Very cool. Yeah, I never ventured into that side. I was always in the car side of it, but same. Basically, right? That's cool. Okay, so tell us a little bit about what you specialize in real estate first, and what as you mentioned, you went 110% into it, right? How is your journey? I mean, 2020 to be the president of the board, you're doing very well in real estate in of itself. I mean, that's 6 short years in the whole grand scheme of things, and just starting into the 6th year, I guess, here. How have you grown your career? How have you catapulted yourself to where you are right now?
I think being born and raised in Kamloops, still very much a small town feel. So on the business side of things, I was able to have a lot of very natural connections. Having that background in sales / attention to detail and paperwork, gave my clients a lot of confidence in what I was doing. And I realized that it almost seemed easy when all you had to do was care about your clients, right? Advocating for their best interest, I guess, is something that was opposite in the dealership world, right? So I really got to fight for what my clients were after, and it became natural. And I think people saw that, and it made the business side of things easy.
It's funny that you mentioned this because obviously, since Stonehouse started in 2017 or end of 2017, I've probably coached 1,000+ agents over the years, right? And many of them, obviously, some of them top rock star producers, some of them brand new agents that became rock star producers. And everybody asked me, and the first question actually I asked them is like, what do you expect out of real estate? What do you think like a successful real estate agent does on a daily basis, right? And a lot of the answers that I get is based on like $1 million listing. You know what I mean? Like we're negotiating and we're this and this and that. And I just tell them, I'm like, okay, that's part of the job, obviously, but it's a very, very small part in the grand scheme of things, right? And I always tell them, you know, coming from the car business in the past, real estate is the easiest and most difficult sales gig I've ever had. And the reason for that is that the actual sales process is extremely easy. Just like you said, it's making sure your client's best interests are involved. Like, I don't care what house my client buys, big house, small house, pink house, whatever. It makes no difference as long as they're extremely happy, they can get it within their budget and they're affordable and they're happy at the end of the day. What makes it difficult is comparatively to the car business is in the car business, yes, we did cold calling and stuff too, but generally speaking, you're calling past clients and database to come back in. But basically, if you're selling, for example, a GM and they come on the lot and they're comparing it to a Dodge, I can't sell them a Dodge. So I got to jam them into a GM or whatever. You know what I mean? Like whatever's in my lot, I got to convince them that this is the best and this is the only thing that they can buy, right? But the difficult part of real estate and the easy part of car sales is they're coming onto the lot based on that GM sign or based on past clients or whatever it is. Where in real estate, like you have to go find that client, right? You have to, and then you have to convince the only sales part in my particular, only real sales part, I guess, on it is that you have to convince them to work with you versus the other 25,000 awesome agents in the province, basically. You know what I mean? So when you say that a lot of it was built on making sure that your clients were first and you kind of transitioned from the business that you were in before to this, where did you pick up your clients to begin with? Like, where did you find those clients? Because that's the difficult part in a lot of the scenario.
Yeah, I think the most difficult part, put it in one word, trust, right? How do you develop that trust with people? I think that, and this is probably not the greatest answer to your question, but throughout my life, I've always been known as a very trustful person. So as soon as I started putting my name on social media as Mr. Realtor, a lot of people automatically trusted me and wanted to put their trust in the biggest financial decision that they're ever going to make, right?
So let me ask you this, because this is something that comes up quite a bit. And I remember there was a gentleman, one of the first guys on my team. This guy ran like a cell phone shop. Everybody trusted him. He like everybody knew him. He was like that kind of connector guy, the go-to guy. But in his first 2 years, they were very difficult. He expected he was going to come in and everybody that bought cell phones from him before are going to buy cell phones from, or are going to buy houses from him now because they love him, right? A very lovable guy, great personality. But the hard hitting fact was in his first 2 years, he probably sold none of his sphere or clients, past clients or anybody homes because they trust and love him personally, but they also know he's brand new. So they love him, but they don't trust his knowledge and capabilities, right? How did you get over that hurdle starting out?
Yeah, so this is one thing, and this isn't even just a plug for Stonehouse, but this is what very few brokerages offer. I was fortunate to have this when I first started, but having great culture and having great mentorship, right? Those are kind of two of the keys because sure, you can do your real estate course and you come out of that and you've got your license and you're allowed to practice. But in my opinion, a lot of agents shouldn't practice alone at that point because that course doesn't teach you almost anything about day-to-day real estate, right? So having that culture and being in the office on a daily basis and having those mentors that you can reach out to with questions, again, on a regular basis, is what's going to define your career. Regardless of how much people trust you, you still got to know what you're doing at the end of the day.
And how did you, you had some amazing people to work with that you could learn from, right? How did you convince people that, for example, you have somebody, as you mentioned, you posted on social media, right? How did you, because sometimes they're not even going to give you the call to be able to kind of, for you to show them that you actually have this knowledge base, that you've learned these things, that you've taken the time to study, that you've talked to your mentors, etc. How did you get them to reach out to you, or did you reach out to them to get that opportunity to actually present them your capabilities?
So I think as a brand new agent, one of the very first things I did was I created a list of my sphere of influence. So let's make a list of all the people I normally interact with, that I have relationships with, because how do you advertise to your friends? Nobody wants to be advertised to, right? So I made a list of those people and I just made a point of reaching out to them, not necessarily to say, hey, come let me take care of all your real estate needs, but let's just reconnect and make sure that I'm in touch with these people, because being top of mind is why people are going to reach out to you a lot of times, even if they're not seeing what your capabilities are in a specific career or whatever it might be.
So on your social media, are you also putting out like proving your knowledge base? Like, are you putting out facts? Are you like kind of teaching the general public? Like what does that look like to you? It's because you brought up the social media to begin with.
Yeah. So I'm terrible with social media. I've gotten better in the last little bit. Now it's daily posts on every single social platform, and try to make some of it either fact-based, news-based, or just some sort of value-based that people in their different walks of real estate life are going to find value in.
I love that center of influence thing, because that's something that like I coach in my coaching company, at the brokerage, etc. I find it like extremely important to find that avatar, and people are going to be shaking their heads because I probably say this in every single podcast now, but finding that group of people that you already have a really good relationship, that you've kind of proven that you are the trustworthy guy, that you're going to make sure that they're in the right hands through that entire stressful process of buying or selling real estate. So you reached out to them. One of the beautiful things that I always tell every single realtor, because real estate's always a hot topic, just like when I was in the car business, people always wanted to know about the latest and greatest or whatever, right? And I'm sure the same with the Harleys and all the other things that you were a part of. I just coach people like, listen, man, you just say, hey, how's it going? How's work? I ask them, how's work going? They're going to say how their work going. And generally people that like you and are polite and friendly, they're going to ask you back, how's work going with you? And it's an opportunity to start talking. Well, actually, funny enough, I'm in real estate now. This has been going great. This has been a challenge. I just be real with it. And they always want to learn more, and it always kind of piques their interest, right? Is that similar to kind of how you have these conversations, more or less?
Yeah, I think guys like you and myself, we like people, right? So back to one of my first comments, all you have to do is care. I care about people. So when I'm reaching out to these people, going for coffee, going for lunch, I have a genuine interest in what's going on in their lives, right? Exactly. And all you have to do is be genuine, want to care about people, and it's reciprocated very much so, right?
So you had some early success, and you've continued to grow even in challenging markets like what we're having right now. How have you like grown the business? Like, how have you compounded at during those years?
I think consistency and creating processes, right? When you come out of that course, and especially in a 2020, 2021 market where it's trial by fire and deals are coming at you, learn fast, but how do you standardize things and make it as similar to the same process every single time, right? That's how you're going to allow yourself to have more free time. That's how you're going to allow yourself to do a better job for your clients. And that's how you're going to create growth within your own business.
And it's funny, like guys like yourself, you're in phenomenal shape, workout. So you obviously have a system for that. You have a system for your daily life, right? I know you're married and you have a lot of things going on with that side of your life, right? Could you give us some examples of like some of the systems that kind of freed up time or delivered more business? Like, what are some of the things that are part of your daily routines or activities that make sure that you kind of optimize that?
Yeah, so live by your calendar. If you go through the process of booking an appointment, I know there's others that are going to be out there just like this. You want to cancel that appointment sometimes because there's something else you want to do, or you just want a little bit of a break. But think about all the time and effort that went into booking that appointment, the person on the other side, and you're probably still going to have to do that appointment later on. So just sticking to your calendar as much as possible. Written processes and checklists for when it comes to listings, when it comes to buyer appointments or initial buyer interviews. The more you standardize it, the less thought is actually even going to go into it. So it's not as mentally draining at the end of the day. So it's kind of less work at the end as well, right?
And I think also that kind of shows the professional level that you have too. Like if you're, running by the seat of your pants kind of thing, always don't know what is left or right, don't have any kind of standardized practice that you do daily rituals, morning rituals, things like that, then it kind of makes it doesn't ensure that kind of confidence, right? Like when you walk into a bank or you walk into a well-oiled dealership, there's a process of everything. This is how you talk to them. This is what they say. This is how they write the application. So it shows like, hey, I've done this a million times before, right? And even if you're a brand new agent and you haven't done a million times before, but you have a checklist that you're going through, right? it makes it seem like you do. You know what I mean? And do you have like checklists and all these different types of things for your marketing and everything else as well, or?
Mostly just on processes right now. Marketing, I've got a company that takes care of a lot of the marketing for me, just to offload that to, again, give the work-life balance.
Yeah.
I think in real estate, especially because every transaction is different.
Yeah.
A, by the client you're working with, and B, by the property. It's tough to have everything fully standardized, fully automated. You can work towards that to free up as much of your time as possible. But that's where the challenge in real estate is. And that's where it's nice to have as much routine as you can create, whether it's starting with the gym first thing in the morning every single day, and then moving into email follow-up after that. If you can standardize those, that's going to allow you to have that flexibility where necessary on those items that you can't necessarily create.
You kind of parlayed into the next question I was going to ask you. So what does your daily routine look like as a successful agent, president? And for those of you that don't understand, and honestly, I didn't understand, and it wasn't you that told me, it was Ben, our managing broker, that sees you in the process. Like some days you have, you're, once again, we talked about how massive this board is, like geographically, right? Like you're talking about way bigger than all of, Vancouver to Chilliwack. You're doubling that in actual size, or if not more, right? So that's a lot of driving. That's a lot of Zooms. That's a lot of meetings. Like how many, as the board, and I'll kind of get into that, like how many meetings alone do you have like a week or a month in that?
It can vary just depending on the time of year. Now that we're heading into spring, it's going to be busy time. I think that they figure it's about 50 days away from home per year.
Wow.
We're doing trips to the island for lobbying on behalf of the real estate industry as well as the public. Yeah. We do trips to Ottawa to do the same. It's trips within our board area just to make sure we're touching base with members. Zoom meetings, again, just depending on what committees are meeting, because I have to sit on every single committee.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of Zoom meetings. It's a lot of time and effort to be on the board in the role as the president, as a regular director, because I don't want to scare people away. It's a lot less of a time commitment for sure.
So, I mean, at the end of the day, it's pretty much a full-time job with your other full-time job, basically.
Might be a bit of a stretch, but it's a lot of time. It's a lot of time.
So could you give us an example? Because I think this is really important. Especially not even new realtors, any realtor that wants to go from wherever they're at right now to something else. I'm a huge believer in morning rituals or routines, I should say. I shouldn't even say ritual, but routine. Obviously, systems, leverage. Like once you start doing anywhere between 20, depending on the type of business you do, 20 to 40. I've had hundreds of agents literally come to me, Sean, should I start a team? I always say no. Get an assistant first, leverage that, move next. What does your daily routine look like generally?
So coming out of holidays now, and it's going to be a little bit more structured, just knowing that things are going to be busier. I usually wake up at 5 a.m. When I'm on a really good workout routine. It's okay, making the eggs in the morning and the egg sandwiches for the rest of the day. Head to the gym, get to the office, hopefully by about 10 a.m. But of course, I'm catching up on emails throughout my workout too, because I'm really bad at separating things, right? At the office for at least a few hours, and then continuing on with appointments throughout the day, showings, making your CMAs, showings into the evening, and then try to finish showings by about 7 p.m. so that when you're getting ready to write your offers, you've got at least time to write the offer and submit it, and hopefully start a negotiation and finish it up by the next morning at the gym.
Nice. That's an awesome day. So, as far as like you kind of told us how you built your business, did you ever do any like direct prospecting? Like, did you ever do the cold call stuff or any of that kind of stuff?
100%. So my background with Harley especially was a lot of formalized sales training and formalized phone call training. So a lot of scripts. So that I spent a lot of time doing that in my previous life. So I knew that if I did that moving into real estate, that I'd be successful. The mentors that I was under when I first started, they had a full website, lead generation. We were getting all of us. There's a few new agents. So between each agent, we were getting about 2 new leads per day. And so a lot of that phone call, as well as going from the lists and just hitting the phones through that, phone call after phone call after phone call, dialing for dollars. And there was a lot of success in that.
Yeah. And I tell everybody too, like, everything in your life, like when your kids come up and talk to you and they want something or whatever, it's like a script. They're repeating the same thing every single time. And a lot of people shy away from that word script because they think of like, and no offense to TELUS or any of these phone companies, but they think of like the person that's calling you and that you can literally hear them reading the script off of it, right? The reality is once you memorize a script, all it is making sure you get the points out that you need. You ask, more importantly, the correct questions in the right sequence. And actually, I think probably the most important out of all of those is most people are scared to call because they're worried about the rejection or more often the objection. And good scripts, if you have mastered these objections, my scripts that we use as my on my team and a lot of the people in the brokerage and all over the place actually, because even Tom Ferry posted a bunch of them of my scripts. They're basically, I am setting up the objection. I know what their objection is going to be like. Oh, I'm busy. Okay, I got one for that. Oh, I need to talk to my wife or my husband. I got one for that. Like, and so now I am waiting for the objection because I know as soon as that objection comes, I'm that much closer to booking an appointment and hopefully building a relationship with that client, right? And it's awesome to hear that even though, and I agree with you 100%, you've gone after your clientele base as far as like the people you know, your sphere of influence and so on and so forth. And that's been one of your major pillars in your business that you've also, and I'm just going to ask this question because I already know the answer to it. So I'm going to ask you this because I know what you're going to say. Like, do you use your scripts intentionally or unintentionally on your sphere of influence?
Yeah, I think that unintentionally for sure.
Yeah.
Because if we remove the word script and replace it with either guide or roadmap, I think that's a better description of it, right? Because
that's beautiful.
You're trying to provide the information that person is after. And because you have the conversation all the time, it's a script.
Yeah.
But really it's a roadmap or a guide to moving that person through their real estate journey.
Yeah. And I agree. I've never used that before, but I'm going to steal that. That's now Sean's guide to phone calling. I love it. Just to kind of like dive into that a little bit more, right, is that most good scripts, and correct me if you do it differently, but really it's just like having a conversation with your friend. Like when you have your friend on the phone, you're not going to be just telling them information. You're not going to be like, by the way, this is a great deal because it's $399,000 and this is this. Instead, you're going to be asking questions like, how was your day? Like, oh, you inquired about a property. Tell me what you're looking for in a property. Like, it's asking the correct information to A, build that trust and rapport, but B, also to be able to, like you said, guide them on the correct direction, right?
Yeah. It's funny because I was doing a lot of phone training with new agents, and I would always ask them, what's your goal of this phone call, right? And everybody wants to be super keen and they want to say, oh, I want to get a buyer out of it. I want to get a listing out of it. I want to get an appointment. And for sure, appointment should be one of the first things. But I always said, make a friend out of that phone call, first and foremost. You know, if you get an appointment out of it, that's a bonus. But if you can make a friend and provide value to that person, it doesn't matter if you made that appointment or not, because you're going to be able to have a second phone call.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. And I agree 100%. And like I just use the word building rapport, but really that is just building friendship, more or less. Mm-hmm. And the reality is, and I say this to every single person, like if you go in trying to close somebody, and on an opposite side, right, and this is to the realtors out there, if you're making a call and you think you've built a massive relationship without ever having the appointment, you're going to be sadly disappointed when they go walk into an open house and buy with somebody else, right? Your goal is to build that relationship, that rapport, build that friendship, and at the end of the day, that leads to the appointment. The appointment secures that client agent relationship, and then you can kind of move forward from there. All right, man, huge. I really appreciate it. I want to kind of dive more into, because you're seeing all the stats, all everything. So I'm going to ask you, and I won't get you to give me the exact statistics because
thank God.
Yeah, exactly. But I'm sure you've heard this. I'm sure it's come up a lot because it's something that's all over Instagram, all over Facebook. And I'm assuming it's true because what would be a lie on Facebook and Instagram? But that 70% of all agents in Canada, I've read, and then I saw one that just said BC, so I don't know which one's which, but in Canada didn't do a transaction in 2025.
Yeah, I haven't seen the actual agent numbers on that side of things. You look at the population growth throughout our province, and in the interior, our sales were up slightly, not by much, but they're up slightly. Or you see in the lower mainland when sales are down drastically. When you see this huge population growth, you think that the numbers should be drastically going up, right? So I'm really not surprised that 70% of agents didn't do a deal last year. And I honestly wouldn't be shocked if those numbers weren't far off in previous years, maybe in the boom a little bit different. But I think there's a lot of realtors out there that don't do a whole lot of deals, and maybe they just want to have their license to take advantage of an opportunity as it comes up. But if you're not doing this full time, you're not going to get those opportunities, in my opinion.
I agree. I think like, and I tell every new agent this that comes on board, because a lot of them, obviously, life in Canada, life in BC particularly, is very, very expensive, right? So, and real estate, for those that are potential buyers or sellers, and I hear the commissions, oh man, you guys make so much money, and so on and so forth. A lot of people, just like other business, when you walk into a restaurant and you find out that restaurant does $200,000 a month in business, you never think, oh, that guy's probably a multi-millionaire, because you understand that he's got to pay a lease, he's got to pay for the food, he's got to pay staff. Like, there's a lot of overhead involved in that. And it's the same with real estate. Most realtors are absolutely shocked when they find out, when they step into it, how much it actually costs to operate as a full-time business, right? And that's why a lot of, unfortunately, agents leave the business as well. But and this is more like, as the president, obviously you hear a lot of the concerns of the agents that you service, that you work for, right? What are some of the biggest trials and tribulations right now that you're finding agents are going through in this market right now? Like, what are some of the things you repeatedly hear about that, and maybe from a board perspective, how you think things might change? Just some insight.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest challenge is legislation change. So the amount of legislation that has changed in the last 2 to 3 years has come at an unprecedented rate, right? Like, we've never seen this amount of change in the real estate sector ever. Trying to adapt to that is a major challenge. And so tied in with that major challenge for agents is the paperwork burden, right? So the new forms all the time, legislation comes out, the forms we're used to using have to change. Notifications go out, but all of a sudden it seems like the form is just gone out of your kit, and now you don't know where to find it. So that's probably the biggest thing. And trying to communicate back with the general membership as to why changes were made, how we're trying to adapt, and how we're trying to advocate on their behalf is probably, I know that's a big one, but it all ties in together. That's probably the major challenge that I see for most agents.
And it's true. Like, I feel like, obviously, unfortunately, realtors have as a general population, I know as a society of full-time realtors, brokerage owners, members of our boards, like, we're trying to make our profession as professional as possible, right? We're trying to uphold a level of professionalism, far and above, what we get compared to as used car salesmen. No offense to used car salesmen. I was one. So, but at the same time, though, I feel like we've also been a pincushion for a lot of, like, the things that have been politically wrong decisions in the past, and or structurally, I feel like BCFSA is on the hunt for us 24/7 to try to find something at fault. A lot of the stuff, and I know you're in a delicate position because obviously you have to respect the rules and so on and so forth associated with it. But, like, even things like, I'll use FinTrack for example. FinTrack, for those of you that aren't realtors, is basically we're supposed to vet our clients for anti-money laundering and terrorism and things like that, right? And for me, and obviously, has there been money laundering through British Columbian real estate? 150%. Like, it'd be extremely naive to say otherwise, right? But we've almost been pushed like it's the realtors that created this, you know what I mean? And now a lot of the burden has been put onto us, which to me, like, I had a conversation with some of the head of FinTrack, and we just brought on Really Trusted, a company that basically takes over the FinTrack process for us digitally and does all these things. But if you don't know, technically you're supposed to Google your client. You're supposed to check their Facebook, Instagram, all these other things. It's very invasive questions like, do you live X amount of distance from an airport? Like it is, I don't know, I can't even remember off the top of my head, but it's probably got to be at least 10 pages to FinTrack, and they change it and add on to it every single day. And my question to one of these governing bodies is like, has anybody been prosecuted based on a FinTrack? And 0 people in all of Canada have ever been prosecuted by the 10 pages that we have to fill out. Now, I was told that in prosecutions unrelated to like the FinTrack, they have used FinTrack as an example of this guy lying or whatever or gal or whatever the scenario is. But that must be some of the frustrations that you're facing, is that there's so much paperwork that doesn't really make sense. Like at the end of the day, like you're supposed to ask your client basically if they're a drug dealer or a terrorist. Like what drug dealer or terrorist is going to be like, yeah, I'm a drug dealer and a terrorist. I'm a combination. You know what I mean? Like it's like, do you find a lot of it like a bit of hypocrisy? There's a lot of it going around. Like, is that something that you get complaints on?
Well, so kind of 2 parts on it. I'll answer the complaint side afterwards, or I'll answer that first. Yes, we get complaints on it for sure, 100%. I think your comment on, I'm in a tough position on how to answer it. I think it's actually very, very simple, right? Yeah. They come out with legislation based on public complaints. Yeah. So how do we be better and work as a team, as in realtors or mortgage brokers or the public? Yeah. How do we work together to eliminate the nefarious activity? Yeah. Because that's one of the causes that's driving up unaffordability in our province, right? I agree, yeah. So how do we eliminate it or reduce it? Because you're never going to eliminate that type of thing. How do we reduce it so that the public is protected and it's to the benefit of everybody, right? And I think that's a very simple answer, is let's work together to eliminate this type of thing. Yes, it's a major paperwork burdensome task, but it's something that's necessary because of what's been created, not by our industry, but by the looseness of some of the legislation that allowed the nefarious activity to happen, right?
Yeah. And I agree. I think I think, and this is just speaking as a real estate agent now, all my other hats are off, is there's never been a time in my life that I don't want to be a solution or help the problem that is facing all of us, right? Like I have a house, I have properties, like at the end of the day, this affects everybody, right? But I just feel like sometimes, and this is once again, this is just anecdotal, just myself, I just feel like sometimes a complaint happens or something happens and they're like, okay, well, we need to do something about it. And there is no, and I think this is kind of where you were getting at, there is no collaboration between the realtors, between BCFSA, between clients, between the general public to actually come up with a solution that works. And it's just more like, oh, you know what? We should just add 15 more pages of questions that nobody's going to answer. Do you know what I mean? Like, and I think that is, I personally wish that, the BCFSA, boards, and I know boards advocate for realtors and the end users, but BCFSA they're not advocating for realtors at all. They're 150% for the end user, or the buyer and seller, the clients, the general public, which I agree should be 90% of it. But the reality is that I think is that a lot of it's just like these shotgun clauses that, we don't have, for example, we don't have enough rental units, ban all Airbnbs. There's like no thought process. It's just, I want to get votes to get elected and I'm going to be able to put this thing out, right? Like, do you find like a lot of pushback on that? Like, is that something that you're kind of dealing with daily?
Yeah, so there's definitely a lot of shotgun policy that comes out from government. BCFSA acts independently from government in a lot of cases. So just for those out there that aren't aware, a little bit of history. We used to be self-governed with the real estate council. Essentially, realtors would review other realtors, see if they were breaking rules, and then come out with some of the fines, regulation, that kind of thing, right? Realtors weren't doing a very good job at it, so government said, hey, we're going to give you a regulator, as a lot of other provinces have a regulator, and said, here's the BC Financial Services Authority. So they only came about, I want to say roughly 4 years ago. So initially heavy-handed, right? In the last little bit, it's more of a hey, let's try and work together on some of these things. And so they're asking for data from the boards and the individual brokerages, as you know, they do the data call. Where can we work together on that information is where things have kind of been going. So we had a joint meeting with BCFSA not too long ago, and they're asking for information. One of my questions to them was, well, do you have the data on where all the complaints are coming from? Because on the board level, we obviously don't want to see people breaking the rules. Totally. So, can you share that with us so that we can do a better job with the agents on education and that type of thing? So maybe these issues don't even happen. And they were more than willing to share that information. That's awesome. That's something that they're putting together. Yeah. And again, that goes back to the team effort on how do we do better, because that's better for realtors, that's better for the public, that's better for the industry.
Yeah. No, I actually didn't know that. And that's awesome to hear, because on our side, obviously, as a brokerage owner now, we get a lot of complaints from the realtors about, like, a lot of it ends up being they feel like they're getting bullied, more like, hey, I have my best client's interest in heart always. I want to take care of it. I want to be a part of the solution. But all you guys are throwing at me is like, it's a $5,000 fine, $50,000, $100,000, $500,000. It's just and I get it. Like, to be honest, at the very beginning when we had $500 fines for things that were outrageous, like that they should have, gone to jail, in my opinion, for, was way underhanded. Now I understand that they have to go out, and there should be some serious fines for people that are committing these offenses and so on and so forth. The upside, and I'll be genuine with BCFSA, a lot of the things that over the last couple of years, they were fining, now they're warning. And so, like, there's actual conversations, especially like one of the biggest things that I come across, and I'm sure you come across this quite a bit, is with advertising when it comes to realtors, like not having the brokerage on their advertising, not, saying they're top 10%, but it was in 1994, you know what I mean? And they're not disclosing that, right? Like it is marketing to get clients, which I understand we all have to do that, but it's also, slightly deceiving, I guess, for lack of better words. And they're trying to protect the public and make sure that only factual information is given out. But I can genuinely give BCFSA props or credit for the fact that the last few that we've had complaints on our clients or on our agents. And the funny thing is, and I'll just be very straightforward with it, I don't think I've ever had a complaint from an actual client, like buyer or seller. It's always been another agent that complained about an agent that they didn't put Personal Real Estate Corporation, they put PREC or something like that. But they have been much more like, hey, you have 15, these are the things that came up. You have 15 days or 30 days to remedy this. Please send us proof of this, blah, 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 blah. So I'm happy to hear what you're saying, because I actually, that's the one thing I have noticed over the last year or two, that they've been much more cooperative and less like as heavy-handed in a lot of the cases, right? Okay, so I wanted to go into your thoughts, and obviously you see the data that's coming out with sales and so on and so forth. What are your personal thoughts on the future of real estate in British Columbia? Obviously, as you said, sales went up slightly for your board, which is huge. Whereas the boards that I work out of, they've dropped, this 25-year lows and so on and so forth. Where do you see the future of real estate? Where do you see growth happening throughout British Columbia? We'll just ease at that. And yeah, what are your projections or thoughts for the future?
Yeah, I think that one of the reasons that our area actually ended up with more sales is probably affordability. Yeah. But then also desirability of the product. And by product, I mean type of homes that people want to move into, right? I think that interest rates made things less affordable. I think that COVID shifted people's fundamentals on what they wanted out of life. So if they had the ability to work remotely, the city amenities are nice, but hey, we can move to a place like Kelowna or Kamloops and have a lot of the outdoor things that we desire and that we say we want to do in the city, and then we don't end up going and doing the grouse grind or going out to Squamish for a mountain bike ride, right? I think that across our country right now, affordability is a very major thing. Where I see things going, and this is one thing that we advocate on a very regular basis, is we need to go towards things like prefab. Okay. It's we're in a very different climate compared to down south where they can build all year round, right? Something like prefab, where you can do prefab townhouses, you can do prefab detached homes, and going that route where you can speed up construction and do it at a lesser cost. I think that's going to be one of the things that unlocks home ownership for a lot of people in the future, especially if they don't want to live in a 450 square foot condo, right?
Yeah. Are you noticing? Because overall, I think as a country, we had immigration, so more people left than came in, and I think it was about 115,000. I think that's the lowest amount of people coming. Well, technically, they left the country since like the 70s or 80s or something like that, if I remember correctly. But you guys have population growth, so obviously a lot of people are moving from either the Lower Mainland up to where you guys are, right? Kelowna, Kamloops, the entire board. Do you see that continuing over the years? And is majority of the people that are moving to your areas from Greater Vancouver, or are you seeing a lot of people from Alberta, different parts of the country? Like, what do you foresee happening for like the Okanagan and the surrounding areas?
So we actually used to track this. It used to be mandatory for us to input a buyer's postal code of where they moved from. And so we actually used to have really good data on this as to exactly where people were moving to our areas from. We don't track it anymore, and I think it's something that we're working on bringing back because it's really good information, especially for listing agents when you're saying, hey, I've got this property, I can pull up the data, who's actually buying this property, where are they moving from, right? I do see our areas continuing to grow, if for nothing else, but availability of land and affordability compared to the cities. And by cities, I mean the Lower Mainland, right? When you look at what a one-bedroom condo is downtown Vancouver, it's $670,000. I mean, you can get a fully detached home with a basement suite where your mortgage is less and you've got a yard and everything in Kamloops, right? So I think that if that's what people desire, if that fundamental mind shift stays the same for people, then there will be net migration into these other affordable areas. I think that as a country, politically, we're in a very strange spot right now. We've got Carney, who is labeled a liberal, does a lot of things as a conservative when it comes to the economics. So I honestly don't know what's going to happen when it comes to immigration policy.
Are you... as far as like the investor base, so we had one of my business partners I do project marketing with on the podcast earlier, and he lives in Kelowna, and he's noticing a lot more because of the affordability. Like we have a townhouse complexes coming out starting at possibly $499,000 for a couple of units, right? And obviously that's half the price that you're going to find in Langley, even kind of thing, right? So are you finding that investors now from like the Greater Vancouver or other parts of British Columbia are starting to look here as an opportunity as investment as well? Or are you noticing that it's mainly migration that's coming?
I think the investment landscape is tough overall right now. A couple of years when interest rates were low, everything had a great cap rate. I know a lot of investors, they like the Lower Mainland because they thought it was safe. I think that mindset is going to be broken for a little bit. And I think investors are going to be looking for that actual cap rate now. Condos are going to be really tough everywhere to find that cap rate that makes sense. But Kelowna, Kamloops, some of these other interior communities, they always had, and I think they will for a long time yet, have those cap rates, 7 to 10. Sometimes you can even find 13% on a property with only 20% down. You talk to a lot of Lower Mainland investors and they go, oh, I get that. And I go, well, how much are you putting down? Well, 35%. Well, yeah, of course. I came up with a saying the other day. Well, you can make any property cash flow. You just got to put 50% down, right?
Exactly. That's true. So question for you, and this is another thing that came up on our previous conversation as well, is obviously the lack of Airbnb or the legislation against Airbnb, especially in Kelowna. And like I was mentioning on earlier, I came up during the summertime to this office to do some work, and it was last minute, and I think the cheapest hotel I could find was like $520 a night or something like that. It was like ludicrous, right? And I know the numbers of visitors were down I think I said 60% last time. I'm not 100% sure if that was the case or not, but the numbers that I've heard of the over tourists last summer versus like the peak or whatever and whenever it was. Are you seeing legislation softening? Is Airbnb going to be something that comes back for the affordability, I guess? Because now, as I mentioned, the gentleman that was here before, now apparently the vacancy rates are as high as 6% in Kelowna. It's no longer, you can find lots of places to rent. Basically, rental prices have come down significantly, just like they have in the Lower Mainland. Are you finding like there's a push for loosening of the Airbnb to kind of bring back the tourist industry, or?
This is a bit of a passion project of mine
Nice.
because at the association level, we do a lot of lobbying, and we've worked a lot on short-term rentals, especially in a place like Kelowna that is so tourist dependent, right? Especially in the summer. No, the government doesn't seem like they're wanting to shift. When it comes to removing the policy in general, we're not going to see that at all. And I don't think they should remove a blanket policy because we needed some sort of regulation because it was hurting affordability. So how do you get creative and find something that's going to work for the tourism industry or other needs of the community? So one of the things that we've been advocating to government on are, how about seasonality restrictions? So you're allowed to actually Airbnb the property in the summer. You know, in a place like Kelowna, that's great. You've got students that leave in the summer. They go back home to wherever they're from. But it forces landlords to open that property back up and provide for less expensive housing for students at those times. What about designated areas around healthcare centers? You know, you've got people that come to major centers, Kelowna, Kamloops, where it's the only hospital in specific areas. You're asking them to stay in a hotel for, you know, a couple of weeks while they're getting treatment. It's just not affordable. So why not designate areas around these health centers for either people that need to come or travel nurses? Because we're always at a lack of staff for either RNs or physicians or any of those types to come to our smaller centers, right? So how do you create a problem solve this? Because the vacancy rate issue is, it's a lot of work to create an Airbnb where now all of a sudden you have to shift it and it can't be an Airbnb anymore. So yes, now your vacancy rate is up and technically you're allowed to do an Airbnb. What happens if that rate drops again next year and now you can't? No savvy investor is going to buy an Airbnb, and we should call it short-term rental, right? But no savvy investor is going to buy a short-term rental in a center where it's dependent on the vacancy rate because that can fluctuate so much, right?
That makes sense. What about, and also I've heard Kelowna does have it here, and various other municipalities do too, where they look at completely rezoning particular areas as hotel type zoning or like short-term rental type zoning, like, and I'm talking like 10 blocks or something like that. And then obviously that's, and maybe that's rezoning from single family to now multifamily, opportunities for those. Because really you're not taking away from the pool that already exists, right? There's tons of rental purpose only buildings being done. But is that something that they've thought of just like generalized rezoning?
Yeah, so that's definitely another push, not just from us, but from municipalities now as well. I want to say it's Summerland was actually already doing a really good job of that. And that power was removed when the legislation came out. You look at some of these projects that developers are doing, like Aqua, right here in Kelowna, on the water. It was purpose built to have short-term rentals in it. And so if those units had sold ahead of time, now those owners can't even rent out that unit because it's 400 square feet, no bedroom, and it's got a kitchenette in it, and it's a glorified hotel room, right? That's not designed to be a long-term rental. And this is where we keep asking government, hey, let's take a look at some of these circumstances and let's work together on creative problem solving, because it's not gonna solve the objective of what the legislation was.
That makes sense. So do you see that maybe the province or any of the legislation may be handing back, like with some basic requirements, for example, of if you're building, I'm just talking nonsense here, but you build 500 units of purpose-built rental, then you could have 100 short-term rental or something like. Have you noticed them giving or thinking about giving any of the municipalities some of that power back to decide what is best for their communities?
We haven't seen that yet. However, government, when they're coming up with legislation, typically they don't do a whole lot of consultation. What they'll typically do is they'll reach out to specific groups that they want feedback from, and they'll have them sign NDAs on, hey, we're asking about this. What are your thoughts? One of the things we keep asking about is, can you do what we would call a roundtable? So can you put together a table of stakeholders that you consult with when you're coming out with legislation, so you can see some of these unintended consequences? If you look at something like the rescission period, you talked before about something that just came off the cuff for legislation. That was somebody in government who they had a family member had a bad experience. Hey, what about this as an idea? Tons of unintended consequences, and nobody actually uses it for what it's intended for, right?
And we're out of the market now where we're in multiple offers where it's even really applicable. You know what I mean? So
too little, too late.
Yeah, exactly. Awesome, man. One last question before I let you go here, and I really appreciate there's been a ton of information and nuggets there. Kind of back to like the holistic picture, and I'm just going to kind of narrow down to your area. And I kind of hit on this before, if you could forecast the next couple of years, right? Or maybe you're a brand new agent here and you're thinking about getting into real estate, right? You're thinking about joining or making this your career, right? What are like some last minute nuggets of, hey, this is a great area to start in, or these are some of the things that I'd be wary about. Like, what are some of the tips that you would give for agents that are here that having a hard time, hopefully a good time too, but having a hard time thinking about getting into real estate in your specific board that you help govern? What are some of the things that you would leave for them?
Yeah, I think for existing agents in the interior, I think we're going to see, kind of steady Eddie growth over the next 3 to 5 years. I think we're kind of at the bottom of where we were for high interest rates and buyer apprehensions and that type of thing. And if there's agents that are out there that are struggling, I would probably just say you get what you put in, right? If you can get back to the basics, remember why you were busy before, and just start putting in the work, right? Yeah. Get creative. Talk to those agents that are busy. Don't be shy, right? Talk to that agent that's a rock star in your area, and maybe they will, maybe they won't share some good tips with you. I'm always of the mindset that the more information, the better. I'm always happy to share with agents as to what I'm doing, what's working, what's not working, because together we're all stronger, right?
I love that. Okay, I lied. That wasn't the last question. It popped up. So now that you said this is your last tenure as the president, right?
Yeah,
that's correct, right? Yeah. What's next?
Yeah, so as of April, I move into the past president role for a year, so I'm still involved, but at a much lesser capacity. Yeah. It was a very hectic, busy year last year, so I'm kind of happy to hand the reins over. It'll be kind of nice. Municipal elections are coming up in the fall in October, so I kind of have my sights set on that. I'm looking forward to that.
Nice. And for Kamloops?
Yeah, for Kamloops.
Awesome.
For sure.
So you're running?
I believe so. I believe
awesome.
so.
What will you be running for?
For position, you mean?
Yeah,
sorry.
Yeah, sorry.
For city councilor. I thought about mayor, but
I think you'd hit it out of the park with that.
I don't think I could do real estate at the same time. I think it's quite a time commitment, and I love real estate. That's always going to be my main focus, but I feel like I have a lot to offer my community.
Awesome. Before I let you go, if they're interested in real estate or joining real estate or any questions whatsoever, what's the best contact to get a hold of you at?
I mean, I always say just give me a phone call. I always love having a phone call with people. You can get through so much more information. Yeah. So give me a call, 778-538-2453. Not everybody wants to talk on the phone, so maybe in the description if we want to leave some email and social media handles, for sure. I live on my phone, as most agents do, so I'll always get back to you.
Do you give workout advice too?
100%. Maybe we'll hit the gym later.
That's it.
We'll share some tips.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Kadin. I really appreciate it. Just leaving you on this note, guys, like Kadin, and please don't take offense, is relatively a young agent when it comes to being in the business, 6 years roughly, absolutely rock star, president of a board, does very financially well when it comes to obviously selling real estate. More importantly, taking care of his clients. Built an amazing reputation. Obviously, I haven't known him that long, but you can tell, there's an aura of people that are trustworthy, people that speak well, that you can tell where the intention isn't the money. The intention is to do well and do right by people. So I highly recommend you reaching out if you're looking for anything real estate related, if you want to pick his brain, if you want to do any of those things, or if you want to just generally ask questions. Like, he's not joking. He probably will give you his workout routine. So anyways, thank you guys for being a part of this podcast again. I really appreciate it. That's it for this House Talks, and I'll see you guys on the next one.